Welcome to Brave Together Parenting, an empowering and truly helpful podcast for the parents of children with disabilities and all unique needs.
If I could only get halfway and I would start sliding down, they would hold their hands underneath my chest and my hips to make sure that I wouldn't slide all the way back down. So that's really important, like having that little safety net to be like, hey, we're not going to let you slide backwards, but you still got to finish the last half of this journey. I've got you, but you still got to finish this out. I can't do this for you. I want to, but I can't because you ain't going to learn anything.
Welcome to Brave Together Parenting, episode 199. I'm your host, Jessica Pacheco, brave mom to an adult son with Prader-Willi syndrome, and I'm the founder of the nonprofit We Are Brave Together. On this incredible episode, we are hearing about the experience of another thriving disabled adult. Jacob Pacheco was born with cerebral palsy caused by a delivery complication. Living life with severe cerebral palsy has not made things easy for Jacob, but through his philosophy and perseverance, he is not only accomplishing great things, but making it his mission to inspire others along the way. He is now an elite adaptive surfer, and he represents the United States on the biggest stages of international competition. He is also an inclusion expert and speaker employed by major companies and nonprofit organizations. I loved this conversation because his energy was so palpable. His positivity was so genuine, not fake, not #blessed kind of positivity. It was real, and his attitude, his grit, his strength, his beautiful spirit was born out of really hard circumstances. And he's just this shining individual today. I wanted to keep talking with him for an hour. It was really, really great to meet him. And I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. A quick reminder to rate and review the podcast, share episodes with your friends, follow us on social media, and check out our episodes posted weekly on our We Are Brave Together YouTube channel. And if you're liking these thriving disabled adult episodes, the newest of our offerings, please let us know in the comments. Now, please enjoy my conversation with the effervescent Jacob Pacheco. Jacob, thank you so much for giving your time and your heart and energy to this podcast, and I'm really excited about our conversation.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You guys are doing great work out there. Happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit of your story? We'll start there.
Sure. My name is Jacob Pacheco. I'm an adaptive elite athlete for Team USA. I also am a professional speaker. So I get to go around, make words come out of my mouth. I get paid to do so. It's a great life. And I also get to create content on social media too. So it kind of all combines together. I was born with something called spastic diplegia cerebral palsy. If you could say that 10 times fast, I'll give you $10. But I haven't met somebody that's been able to do that. So anyways, I was born with that. I was diagnosed at 6 months of age. So since day one, I've been adapting to my challenges and figuring out how to move forward with them. And eventually that turned into surfing waves on the ocean and living my best life and also giving back at the same time. Because I understand that this journey is not just about myself. It's about what we can do for everybody else around us and also the next generation as well. We have to provide those examples of how to adapt and overcome these challenges to help us see beyond and see what the future is and what the next step is.
So true. So true. So let's just talk about what was it like growing up?
Growing up for me it wasn't easy, but it wasn't super awful. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so I did get bullied. I did get beat up, and I had to learn a lot from that. You can tell that you're different from an early age because everybody else can run faster than you. Everybody else looks at you a little differently, and they're not sure what the problems are because there's a lack of information out there. It's not like it is today. It's a bit more inclusive now, a bit more open-minded. But back then, people fear what they don't understand. And that's something that you had to live with. That's what it was like for me growing up. but also the medical technology and what was available to someone like myself was not what it was like today. So essentially, whatever you were given, you had to maximize to your greatest potential. So I had a surgery when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I literally lost my ability to walk and I had to rebuild it all over again in a matter of 12 months.
Wow.
But it took me from severe with cerebral palsy to the moderate to mild side of it for mobility's sake. So that was a big jump. And I was actually part of a medical case study. I was one of 34. And I'm one of those people that they've published a report about. You can find me in some medical journals about that specific study. So that was pretty cool. But it did cost a lot. And it did shape my experiences that went from childhood to early adulthood to now. That takes some time to heal and to grow from. But yeah, it was a hard childhood. It wasn't like a train wreck, but it wasn't easy either.
Okay, you have such a shining spirit, Jacob. So tell me how you took a hard circumstance and not a train wreck childhood, but not an easy childhood, recovering from major surgery that eventually did enable you to have better or easier mobility.
Yeah.
But what was going on in your heart, in your mind, in your psyche? Like, how did you shift from why me to what am I going to do with this or about this or who do I want to be?
It's a great question. I would say, I mean, if you could close your eyes and kind of place yourself in like a blank space right now, and then as you're coming out of this, I want you to kind of open your eyes and think about sitting in a hospital bed. And then you have this sheet covering one half of your body, and you don't know what's been on the lower half of your body as you're waking up. And you're like, is somebody staring at my goods right now? What is going on here? I wasn't prepared for this. And this head pops up over this sheet and says, hey, you're awake. And you're not really sure what's about to happen. You just think that this person literally just saw you in all your glory.
Mm-hmm.
And then they drop down this sheet and it becomes very real very quickly that your body was not good enough. And so your mind and your soul tells you that you're not good enough to be a human being. So you had to be broken in order to be rebuilt. That's what it kind of felt like in that moment, where it became very real very, very quickly. And my lower half was covered in plaster, from the tops of my hips all the way down to the tips of my toes, covered in plaster, separated by a thin wooden rod that was designed to split my legs apart like this to keep them open so my knees wouldn't collapse inwards. That was really tough. Once those casts came off, my legs were like chicken drumsticks going into the operation. They came out looking like toothpicks once the casts were off. So that was really hard. And going through all that rehabilitation, nobody really prepares you for that. They tell you what could be at the end, but they don't really tell you what's going to happen in between the start and the end. That's where you have to kind of fill in the gray space with whatever you have within your mind. But that also comes from people around you that support you. Are they going to push you, or are they going to maybe tell you to relax a little bit and not necessarily work as hard as you possibly can to extrapolate as much as you can out of your body? So I fell into the latter category. There were people that were very supportive, but also very harsh in a good way. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to do this for you. You have to do this for yourself. Do you want it or do you not? That was the literal conversations between me and my mother that were very powerful. Like, this is a woman who gave me life, who protected me, who wanted me to do well, but she never sugarcoated things.
Yeah.
And I thank her for it. As hard as it was and as difficult as it was to have somebody who loves you tell you that no one's coming to save you. That's me included. I will not save you from this pain, from this suffering. You will have to figure it out for yourself. I will be here to support you, to make sure that you do not fall backwards, so that every inch you gain is yours. And we'll make sure that that slide back doesn't happen. But we're going to sit here and you're going to figure it out. And I've talked about this before in my TED Talk, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it didn't cause some friction between me and my mom. It did. Like, telling that story did cause some friction because she saw it one way, I saw it another. But it doesn't mean that we don't love each other. We do. I tell her all the time, it's because of that I am where I am today. And I cannot thank you enough for it. And she was like, but you make me sound cruel. I'm like, it's not cruel. It's about being real. It's about understanding what the real world is like once you leave home. It can be hard. And I faced that reality at 8 years old. And that was really hard, but it kind of sets the stage for everything else that comes. Nothing really seems that overwhelming as much. It just allows you to take that step-by-step process to say, okay, problem A, here's solution B, here's problem C, here's solution D. Nothing ever seems too big to handle.
After going through that?
Yeah. It gives you the problem-solving skills to say, I'm good. I can handle this. I'm good enough to at least try. I'm not sure if it's going to work out the way I want it to, but probably it's going to end up somewhere close to that. That's how my mind works. And it helps to figure things out, which has led me to you. So I think it's worked out pretty well so far.
Well, gosh, but you're 8 years old. I was getting ready for you to say maybe you were 12 or 13. You were 8.
Yeah.
I love 8-year-olds. I mean, it's just, but you're young. And so for you to take what your mom said and to fight and fight and fight for yourself and your progress and your, recovery from that surgery to get where you wanted to go, that took a lot as an 8-year-old. That's just pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I also will say that, again, they didn't let me backslide. I'm not just talking about my mom. I'm talking about the docs, the therapists, right? So if I fell down, they would help me get back up. But if I could only get halfway and I would start sliding down, they would hold their hands underneath my chest and my hips to make sure that I wouldn't slide all the way back down. So that's really important. Like you get halfway and maybe you start sliding down a little bit, having that little safety net to be like, hey, we're not going to let you slide backwards, but you still got to finish the last half of this journey. That's really important. It's really powerful. I'm sure you've had your own experiences with that with your kids, and where you've had to be like, I've got you, but you still got to finish this out. I can't do this for you.
Yes.
I want to, but I can't.
Yeah. Yes.
She ain't going to learn anything.
Right. And my kids are grown-ish, like 19, 21, 24.
Oh, they still babies. Jessica.
I know.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, yeah, this is the pep talk that I could use with all of them still, Absolutely. So you say in your bio that you faced terrible fate with obsessive rage. I love the way you write this. To validate your existence, I could not be a burden because burdens get eliminated. So how did you take the angst and use it for good so that it didn't take you down into a bitter place or a resentful place?
Yeah, that's a very powerful line that I did write, because I was trying to figure out what did my younger self really feel. I was in a very dark place for a long time, and it took a lot for me to climb myself out of that pit of rage and despair. Because again, you fight hard to validate your existence, and then once you exit outside the safe space of my home, all of a sudden I'm treated differently. And it doesn't really make sense if I'm doing all the things you ask me to do and I'm still not seeing the results, and I'm following your pathway of you telling me to do A, B, C, D, E, and you say that it's going to equal X, Y, Z, but instead it equals V, W, G, H, which is completely opposite, and it doesn't necessarily make life easier or provide me with the ability to sustain a living. That's really hard. That's like getting kicked in the teeth or getting rained on, and people are saying that it's rain, but it's really not rain, if you know where I'm going. That's not fun. So what I had to do was I had to hit the reset button. And what the reset button looks like is 6 months before I'm supposed to graduate with my master's degree, I decide to finish graduating, get my degree, but I decide to start doing what I'm doing now. But thankfully, I had the opportunity to figure it out in that time period because I used resources that were available to me to extend that figuring out period. For example, I used the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation as a student in college to not only pay for my tuition, but also my books, my supplies, and help me out with gasoline and internet costs, all these different types of things. That takes a huge burden off of your plate when you do not have to answer to anyone. It gives you time to answer to yourself. And that's really powerful. So I was able to graduate from college debt free. Well, I don't have anybody to answer to. So that means I can throw darts at the dartboard and see what really sticks. And I decided to do things that I really enjoyed, that I have a passion for. And then I got really focused on improving those skill sets and being so good at it that people had to start paying me for it. Yeah.
So what introduced you to the ocean? Where did you grow up, first of all?
I grew up in Sacramento, Northern California, which is like literally smack dab in the middle of nowhere where the ocean is.
Right.
But we always went to the ocean as a kid, like for on the weekends and things like that. I enjoyed the water period because it was the great equalizer, it's commonly referred to as.
Yeah.
I think that nature is the great equalizer, if you want my honest opinion about it. It's not water's the great equalizer, nature's the great equalizer. It allows me to hold a mirror up to myself and figure out what I need to work on. And the conduit of the water is just the one that really stuck for me. So I moved down to Long Beach, California in 2014 for graduate school. Got my master's degree. While I was doing that, I knew I wanted to surf. I started surfing while I was there, but I couldn't do it on my own. So I had a friend of mine who watched me on one of the first weekends that I was down there, just exploring the area, seeing if it would actually work for me. And for someone coming from Fresno, California, who in the Central Valley, like going to school there for 5 years, coming down to the metropolis that is Los Angeles, it's a culture shock. I mean, you go from a kiddie pool to a legitimate ocean of people. Okay. And that was a real culture shock, but I found purpose in surfing. That's what really started to heal that deep, dark pit of rage and validation that we were discussing a few minutes ago. The ocean started, in a word, beating me down with every single wave that would hit me in the face. That caused me to relax more and more and more and more and more. It was a salve over those wounds, and it was slowly gluing those broken bits of my soul back together again without me knowing about it. And one of the reasons that happened was because of my buddy that I was just explaining about. He was watching me get tossed around as I was training for Paralympic soccer at the time. I was using the ocean's dynamic push-pull as a balance kind of tool. Anyways, this day was huge. I mean, the water was pushing up onto the shore like crazy. I was getting rolled like a pig in blanket, getting rolled up onto the sand, spitting rocks out of my mouth, having a big old smile on my face while I've got these chips in my teeth from all these rocks that are just blasting my mouth, right? But I don't care. I spit out all those rocks and I'm running back into the ocean. And this dude's watching me from a berm about 50 feet away. And he's like, that dude's a nut job. And I want to meet him because he seems to be really enjoying himself.
Wow.
He ends up leaving. He comes back because his spouse at the time is like, will you regret not saying hello to this person? And he said, yes. She's like, well, you should probably turn around and do that. He ends up finding me. He ends up knocking on my mentor's van door, and my mentor meets him. I'm getting changed. So I'm half naked right now. And I'm like laying down on the floor of a van, and I've got a towel over me. And my buddy bangs on the van door. He goes, hey, Jacob, somebody wants to meet you. And he opens the door before I'm ready. I literally throw the towel over me and I fall backwards and my head's hanging out. And I'm like, what's up, dude? And that's how we met. And 90 days straight from the time I moved down to Long Beach, for 90 days straight, rain or shine, that person took me out. And he carried my board and he towed me out, threw me into waves, ran all the way back and took me back out again and did that every day, 90 days straight for 2 hours every single day. And now I'm competing for the United States. We just finished up World Championships for the second year in a row for me. And so to come from that, where I didn't know what I was doing and I was a guppy, to being on Team USA, it was a pretty big jump. And we talked about that last year. He was like, he was honest. He was like, I didn't really believe that you were going to make Team USA when we first started doing this, but he's like, you did it. He's like, you actually did it. And that's incredible.
So he was a spectator on the beach who saw you,
Yeah.
saw something in you.
Right.
You were training for another sport. You weren't training to be a surfer, but he saw something and said, let's do this. And you were like, okay, let's try this. And then it just went and it kind of exploded and exponentially grew from there.
Yeah. I initially wanted to try surfing because I saw it on at Islands Burgers. Have you ever heard of Islands Burgers?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So they have these great surfing clips there that just look sexy and beautiful.
Yes.
And I'm young at the time and I'm like, that's going to get me some girls. That's for sure. And I really want to try that. And my mentor was like, you absolutely should. It's great. So the universe kind of heard that.
Yep.
And then brought, Dan the man into my life. And he was the one that taught me how to surf. And I'll never forget how much it actually cost me to get started. So I had a wetsuit already on hand. It cost me $100 to buy a really cheap surfboard that I used for about, I would say 8 or 9 months. It was as rough as sandpaper, but that's what it cost. And here we are. Best $100 I ever spent.
Is Dan still with you today?
Dan is still in my life, but he is in Tennessee now. He made that great mistake of moving out to Tennessee. So,
like everybody else from California.
But he's a happy man now. He's a happy man.
I bet.
He's got a wife, 3 or 4 kids now. So he's doing well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. I have so much I want to ask you.
I know. I'm laying a lot on you. I'm sorry.
No.
I told you this was going to happen, Jessica.
So good. No, this is so good. And it's so encouraging. So let's just shift to the last 10 years. Like, what were your parents saying? What were they doing? How did they respond to what you wanted to do?
That's a great question. How did my parents respond over the last 10 years? So the 10 years ago, it was 2014. I remember at that specific time, my plan, we'll hear about what plans do in life, right? Yes. My plan was to be a professional sports coach in a major sports league, like the NFL or in the European soccer leagues. Like that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. And at that point, my parents weren't supportive of that because it wasn't safe. They didn't really see as, could that provide you with a stable income to support yourself and maybe support a potential family in the future for you? Right. That's their opinions, though. That was their opinions. And eventually, I brought them on side because I actually made it happen. I was able to eventually get a job at a Major League Soccer side in Los Angeles, the LA Galaxy. I was working as a coach for them. I was also a director of operations for a Division I program. I was doing both of those things at the same time while going to school full time. Things were moving. Things were grooving. And it was huge. But as I mentioned before about trying to validate the existence, I was running into these barriers that I couldn't really see, but I could feel them. I could feel them a lot. And I realized that there was going to be a permanent cap on what my potential was in that space, in those types of fields of admin or coaching. It was just a different time. It was truly a different time where nowadays we see a little bit more opportunity, but still the same struggles are being felt where you can provide value, but the opportunity really isn't existent yet. Or it's being inadvertently blocked in some kind of way, shape, or form. So either you have to make a choice. We have to make choices. Do we stick or do we twist? I felt like I was treading water and burning the candle at both ends. And I had also been told that I didn't have the ability or experience to work with athletes at that time. At that moment, that was everything I needed to hear to not only hit the reset button, but I also spiraled a little bit. Because everything I had done, because everything I had done up to that point to really build the skill set, to work into those opportunities, it was like a glass shattering moment. But it's what I needed to hear to throw something else at the dartboard and to try again. And I let it all go. My parents were really not happy about that because obviously they were like, you worked so hard to get to this point. You have momentum. You have these things, but it's always easier to see things with an outsider perspective than when you have boots on the ground and you're fighting on the front lines. So there was a lot of friction again, but I didn't doubt myself enough to stop and change directions. In fact, if anything, I got more focused, more gung-ho. It took a long time. This wasn't like a 12-month, 3-week process, where they sell you these courses where it's like, you're going to make 6 figures in 6 weeks. Like, come on, man. Life is a bit more gray than that. It's not black and white. But that's what I believe. It took me about 5 to 6 years to really develop what I wanted to do. And I tried to make ends meet at that time. And of course, there was a lot of pressure on the familial side to go into something a bit more stable.
Right.
Thankfully, right before lockdown happened was when I got my big breakthrough. And as far as public speaking is concerned, and then I built upon that in the middle of the lockdown. I got a TEDx talk. And that really opened the doors. And I've never stopped building on that momentum. And it's taken a long time, but here we are now. And it's something I'm very proud of. Not only that, I get to wake up every day doing what I love to do. And it's easier as a result. Like my time is my own, my responsibilities are my own, and I enjoy what I do. Like I get to give back to people like you, organizations like yourselves. So it's pretty dang good. And now I'm a board member for another nonprofit too. So like I said before, it's worked out pretty well.
We might have to ask you to come on our board someday.
I would appreciate that. I would be honored. I would be very, very honored.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I want to go back. And what you were referring to earlier about opportunities not being there, is that because of your disability? That was closing doors because the world in which you wanted to enter was not open yet and not inclusive yet?
Yes. I think that there is some inadvertent barriers when it comes to the job market. I think that the space for mistakes to be made are very, very finite for people with disabilities. However, that's not an excuse to not try. You have to put yourself out there. And I would say in my shoes, I had to be the best of the best. With whatever I was given, I had to make sure that it wasn't just a 10 out of 10, it was a 12 out of 10. And of course, I did make mistakes every once in a while, but they were very few and far between. In terms of the barriers that we've seen in employment, the statistics speak for themselves, but also it's the inadvertent statements of a person who's trying to hire someone speaking to their HR when a person with a disability leaves. For example, if somebody who's hard of hearing leaves an interview and the person wants to hire them because their qualifications are great and everything, and it's a remote job, yet the HR person says, well, how are they going to communicate with their coworkers if they can't speak? And then all of a sudden that person's resume goes down in the bottom of the pile. It's that inadvertent, that unspoken thing that is really tough to combat. And I've had many stories of people who've come to me and said, like, I've waited 3 years to find a job, and it was really hard for those 3 years to figure it out. Not to mention, let's say that person had a girlfriend or a spouse or somebody that they wanted to take care of. I was thinking from the male side of things.
Yeah.
So let's say like my friends who identify as males, who have disabilities, who have somebody that they want to take care of, and they can't take care of them because they're struggling to get a job. That's tough. That's really tough to deal with on a mental side. Absolutely. I know I have the skill set. I know I can do these things. Can the door open? How many times do I have to bash the door in? Right? And my answer is always the same. You keep bashing it in until it's not there anymore. And then when you do get the opportunity, when we do get those opportunities, we have to nail them. Hands, we have to nail them. And even then it may not work out, but it creates a ripple effect and people will hear about it. And that will open an opportunity. The only reason why I say that is because I've actually lived that where those opportunities have opened up. But we have to know where our value is. And when we know where our value is, that's when we can really start to create some waves of change. So for example, like I know one of my strengths is public speaking. I know anytime I get up on a stage, everything goes calm and I start having a lot of fun. It's something that I'm good at. So I know I can leverage those skills into a lot of different things. So I'm a very creative person. That's what I like to do. So that's where my skill set really shines.
I want to talk to you all day. This is so good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's go back to since our audience is parents. Is there something that you wish parents knew or understood? Because we're not in your shoes.
Right. That's a deep question. What would I want my parents to know now? In a way, I wished like past tense that they could be in those interview rooms when I was looking for jobs so they could get a sense of what it felt like to watch that 2 millimeter shoulder droop once I took 2 steps into the room. The first step was always normal,
Okay.
but the second step was the waddle. So my left leg is longer than my right. So my left leg, usually when I walk forward, looks like a semi-normal gait, but I swing my right leg around like a really good soccer kick, except I can't kick a ball worth anything to save my life. And it looks a little bit like a drunken penguin, platypus, whatever. But watching that 2 millimeter shoulder droop, that was really tough to witness within the first 2 seconds of walking into a room. Regardless of how well prepared, how excited, or how beautiful that opportunity was, I could easily pick up on it. It was like, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to climb this mountain, but I'm still going to climb it. But it was disheartening to watch somebody's mind made up in about a second. It's hard.
Well, I just want to validate how hard and disappointing that is. You're so observant, and to notice that and see that it had to really cut.
It's okay. That was a different time in my life where I was a bit more upset, right? But then again, it just wasn't meant for me. And my parents, I wished at that time like they could be there. But now it's like, well, I've let them off the hook in a lot of ways. They did the best they could with what they had. They did the best they could with what they had. Is it perfect? No. And I'm not perfect either. But it did get me to where I am now. And I'm not going back. And they agree. I brought them on side yet again. And now I've taught them at this point. I'm like, don't doubt me, just support me. And they've learned the hard way. I will be very clear about that. They have learned the hard way. And they know better than to tell me no.
Yeah, you don't seem like somebody you can say no to.
Well, you can.
I mean, you can say it, but you're not going to take no. Let me rephrase that. You're not going to take no for an answer.
I know when to step off the gas, but if, for example, if it's just a business transaction, it just means not yet.
And so if you could create anything for the disability community, and it could be really any age, but I know I feel like as a parent who's now has a child who's 21, about to exit the school district, this next season, this next phase is going to be the hardest for Ryan. It's going to be the hardest for us to navigate. It's going to be the hardest for him to navigate. But what would you, if you could create anything for the benefit of the disability community, what would that be?
Access to opportunities. I'm leaving that very open-ended because opportunities is expansive. Access is also expansive. That creates solutions. That creates possibilities. And what can you do with it? So my question for you is, you said your son's about to leave the school district. So is he exiting the public school district and he's going to head into, so hopefully community college? What's the plan there, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, of course you can ask. He will be exiting at age 22. So he didn't get his diploma. He got a certificate of completion. And he's been in the transition program.
Congratulations. I mean, that's a big step. I mean, that is awesome. That's huge. That's big.
I'm just glad that he loves to go and he has a great team and he's safe and supported and, is gaining a couple of skills. Honestly, it's, it's so simplified for me what's best for him,
Right.
But this next phase, he will do hopefully a part-time job and part-time day program. With his particular diagnosis and challenges, it makes it trickier because of the food drive in Prader-Willi syndrome. So, there's so many places for adults with disabilities to work that are cafes and restaurants or, that type of thing. And for someone who's as impacted to him and, needs something like that, he can't be in those environments. He can't be in a grocery store. He can't be in a restaurant. He can't be in a cafe. He can't be around food. So hopefully job and day program that's meaningful and safe, where he's not just in a room being in a glorified babysitting situation.
Yeah.
It's tough because he is an young adult with behaviors and anxiety. And then this food drive that's a part of his syndrome makes it also very, very tricky. Maybe in the next year, there'll be a drug approved, or in the next 5 years that could take the edge off of that food drive and some of the anxiety and behaviors. Maybe that could help, but it still feels very unknown, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And you wrote about uncertainty in your bio. Oh, that you're afraid of uncertainty. Uncertainty creates fear. Yes, I get that. Fear creates judgment. Judgment kills creativity. So I am trying to be open because the fear and uncertainty want to shut everything down. So
I understand that 100%. And the judgment side of things, I was thinking about when I wrote that line, I was thinking about what is it that stops the ability to be creative, to find those solutions? It's judgment. It's the idea of like, I want to go become a public speaker and also create content on social media and hopefully make a living off of that. If you were to say that to anybody, they would be like, who are you? Like, what makes you think you can do that? Understandable. Like the field to do that is small. You've got to be good. You got to be a good storyteller, all that stuff. But what's to say that you can't learn on the job and get better over time? And if you commit the right time and resources to it, you can build something quite valuable, not just in that space, but also being a musician, being an artist. Do we know what your son wants to do? What is he really passionate about? What does he love to do?
It's a good question. I mean, he loves sports. So I think if there was somehow an opportunity to be helpful to a sports team, any team, even the local high school teams in some way, even if he volunteered, even if it wasn't ever a paid position, I think he would love that, to be a part of that.
Do you want to know what my first job in sports was ever?
What?
Team manager. I literally did that for free for 2 years at my local high school. It literally got me in love with the idea of like coaching and doing that stuff because I couldn't play. I wasn't allowed to play. So I tried to figure out ways to be creative, not judge it, just be creative and figure out ways to stay around it. I thought coaching was going to be the option. Coaching didn't turn out to be the option. I thought administration was going to be the option. None of those worked out, but then it came full circle and I'm an athlete now, which is like better. so
that's amazing.
It feels good. I would say for your son, provide the access to those opportunities and allow the judgment to go away.
Okay.
And let him throw the darts at the dartboard and let him see what sticks.
Okay. Thank you for that.
It's going to be hard. It will be difficult. It will be difficult. But the thing I try to say to parents is it's our life. Eventually you're going to have to let us go and we're going to have to live our own lives. Yeah. Would you rather us fly out the coop or fall out the coop? In the case of my mom, she booted me. She was like, fly.
Well, is there anything that you haven't said that you want to make sure that you say for our audience, Jacob?
For sure. I'll close with this. Whether you're a parent or a student or a person with a disability or you're just trying to figure it out, there are paths forward. There are ways forward, and it does happen with enough time and effort. We can figure it out. Give yourself the grace and the opportunity to figure it out. It's going to be all right. I promise you. Because if I could do it, so can you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I wish you the absolute best. I hope that we can meet in person someday at some event. I'd love to be there.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I see all the events you got going on. I'm going to get an invite to one of those, Jessica. You better believe it.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you, Jacob. Thanks so much for listening today. Do us a favor and leave us a review and a rating so that this podcast can get into the ears and the hearts of more and more moms. Did you know that Brave Together Parenting Podcast is an extension of our nonprofit organization, We Are Brave Together? We Are Brave Together serves an international community of caregiving moms, offering support groups that are virtual and in-person, educational resources, and low-cost weekend retreats. And we have published our first anthology of caregiving stories entitled Becoming Brave Together, Heroic, Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight. It will encourage and validate every parent caregiver. To join us today, go to wearebravetogether.org. Our support and sisterhood awaits you. Brave Together Parenting Podcast is for entertainment and education purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional care and should not be relied on for medical or mental health advice. The use of any content on our podcast, links, show notes, or on our website is to be done at your own personal risk. Please seek out a professional to assess your own medical or mental health concerns because we are all beautifully complex and the content of this podcast is for a broad audience.